In this modern age that we live in, the truth can sometimes be obscured and sometimes even twisted. But when it comes to this particular topic, there is no chance of trying to hide what is actually going on. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. Folks, whenever I have a topic that is not exactly one that I envisioned, originally making, it's always kind of interesting for me to come up with the best way to, move forward. But one of the things that over the last couple of days I've noticed, and I even kind of noticed it during the draft itself, is that there is a rival of ours who is blatantly, not even trying to hide it. They are trying to do a copy and paste of the Detroit Lions. Now, if you all saw the thumbnail image, you pretty much figured out who exactly I'm talking about. And when we take a look at it and we think about it from the perspective of the Detroit Lions, the Lions over the last couple of years, they've become a powerhouse in the NFL. They're a Super Bowl contender. They're an absolute monster of an organization. And pretty much every team in the NFL now either respects them, envies them, or fears them. One of those three, or a combination of the three. However, while all teams might have this viewpoint of the Lions, the point I'm going to try and get here is that when you take a look at the team we're talking about here, which if you haven't figured out by now is the Bears are trying to adopt this idea, and it's quite honestly a very failed idea, of trying to copy another team, which in this case is the Detroit Lions, and make their success part of their own. Now, I'm going to say this. It's not uncommon in the NFL for other teams to try and copy a great team's success. We see it all the time. There's a reason why the NFL is called a copycat league. And when they try to copy another team that's doing very, very well, it's called cheating by doing a shortcut. Because rather than actually doing the work yourself and coming to a solution yourself, you're trying to cheat that long process of genuinely building something by taking a shortcut. And when we're talking about this in regards of the Chicago Bears to the Detroit Lions, again, some teams try to do this with a little bit more of a subtle hand, but there's no such thing with the Bears. Let's just call it for what it is. The Bears are in full copy-paste mode when it comes to the Detroit Lions. And there's a pretty good reason why they're trying this. The Bears have long been on the bottom of the league. They have tried multiple times to try and find a winning formula, and to be entirely honest, the issue is they haven't found a winning formula since they wound up firing Lovie Smith after the 2012 season. And ever since then, they have not had any sort of consistent success. Oh, sure, they might have a blip on the radar here or there, but that's about it. And now, much like they've done over the last decade plus, they're once again rebuilding. Now, I already know for a fact that Bears fans are going to say that I'm a hypocrite, and that for a Lions fan to be saying all this is absolutely hypocritical. But it's really? Am I being a hypocrite? I would say that my experience as a Detroit Lions fan puts me in a very good position, puts me in a bird's eye seat, because Lions fans have experienced this exact same thing I'm talking about with longer turmoil, longer turnover in terms of coaches, players, and the results of all the stuff that we've been doing has, referred to us as being a bottom-feeding team in the NFL for a long time. However, why I feel that and if the Detroit Lions wanted to say anything, which I know they won't, but the reason why I think I have the right to criticize the Bears for this foolish venture that they're going into is due to the experience that us Lions fans and the Lions have gone through over the last, 20, 30 years. Let's first and foremost understand something here. When you take a look at the Lions, they have had very much the same problem that the Bears have been having over the last, decade plus. One of the things they've had a problem with is the constant change of coaches and players. Ever since the Bears fired Lovie Smith, the Bears have had 6 different head coaches. I'm not saying they've hired 6. I'm saying they've had 6. They hired Mark Trestman, who lasted for 2 seasons. They hired John Fox, who lasted for 3 seasons. They hired Matt Nagy, who lasted for about 3 or 4 seasons. They hired Matt Eberflus, who lasted for 3 seasons. Actually didn't even last the full 3. He only got about 2.5 in. Then they had Thomas Brown, who was the interim head coach last year. And now they've hired our former offensive coordinator, Benedict Johnson. Over the course of that time, not obviously including Johnson because he hasn't had a full game yet. He hasn't actually, had a game where he's been the official coach. The Bears have had a record of 76-120, which is a win total percentage of .388. Not good. Not good at all. And I can say that with all conviction because us Lions fans know something about that. But as I said, change of players and coaches. Well, I just demonstrated the difference in head coaches that the Bears have had. They've had quite a number of head coaches over the last, decade plus. But if you take a look at how many different starting quarterbacks they've had, oh, good Lord, it's even worse. They've had 15 different starting quarterbacks since 2013. Jay Cutler, Josh McCown, Jimmy Clausen, Matt Barkley, Brian Hoyer, Mitch Trubisky, Mike Glennon, Chase Daniel, Nick Foles, Justin Fields, Andy Dalton, Trevor Siemian, Nathan Peterman, Tyson Bagent, and Caleb Williams, who's the most recent one. I'm just going to say this right now. Most of us who actually follow football know that about 75 to 80% of those names that I just rattled off, they ain't good. And by far, the most successful quarterback that I listed out of those 15 was Jay Cutler, who was the guy that was at the start of the time period that I'm referring to. So, yeah, it's been a very, very dismal picture for the Bears over the last decade plus. Now, I know, again, some people are going to be like, oh, well, David, again, it sounds like you're being hypocritical by criticizing the Bears. Well, again, I have the right to say this because as a Lions fan, I lived through this. All of my upbringing as a Lions fan, I lived through this. I've seen what the Lions did, and I'm now seeing the exact same thing once again being done all over again by the Bears. And trust me, I'm not saying this to be as a cautionary tale for the Bears. I don't give a damn what the Bears do. I really don't. But it's like, listen, when I've heard so many people say, oh, well, the Bears, they're making all the right moves to be able to have success. Really? Are you sure about that? Because let's think about this here. The Detroit Lions. We had, for a long time, an ever-revolving door of coaches and quarterbacks over the years. The Steve Mariucci's, the Marty Morningwegs, the Rod Marinellis, the freaking Jim Schwartzes, and then you had the quarterbacks, the Kitnas, the Harringtons, the Mike McMahons. I mean, dude, we just had it all. We literally saw it happen every couple of years. And every one of us Lions fans, we all know that we had to face that bitter disappointment, knowing that once again, not only was it not working or it was not going to work, but at the same time that it was in fact failing miserably. And the reason why is because it was going to take more than just a few new faces. It was going to take a new attitude. It was going to take a new culture and a new identity to actually solve the deep-rooted issue of failure. And this is what the Lions did. Authentically, I might add. The Bears, on the other hand, have not. They have instead continued to try and do the transplant method that not only the Lions did for years, but they are now also trying, and I'm talking about the Bears, they're trying the copycat or cheat method by trying to use a shortcut to success. And I can say this with 100% authenticity and accuracy. It's not going to work. Let me just demonstrate for you here. Us Lions fans know exactly what I'm about to talk about here. The Lions, for years, tried the transplant method of taking winning cultures, winning identities from other teams into our own, and somehow was hoping that it would work. We tried it on 3 different types of teams, 3 different types of cultures by taking what they had worked with and try to bring it here. We first tried it with the 49ers. Didn't work. Tried it with the Colts. That had some success, but ultimately it didn't lead to the results we were looking for. So we moved off of that one. And then the latest one we tried was with the Patriots. Now, as I just demonstrated, for the most part, each of those met with little or no success. Again, the most successful being the Colts demonstration when we had Jim Caldwell as our coach for 4 years. We had 3 winning seasons during that time. We had 2 playoff appearances. So there was some moderate success there. But again, the one thing that we never got was actually postseason success, which was what us Lions fans were wanting. We were tired of just simply saying, hey, you know what? Maybe we get a winning season. Maybe we get a playoff appearance. No, we want a playoff victory. We want to actually know that we're really taking a step forward in the right direction. Because that's where the true indicator of success is. Hey, not only can you get to the playoffs, but can you win a playoff game? Hey, can you be successful enough to maybe even win a division title? That's where you start really seeing that true measure of success really start to take off. But we never saw that under Jim Caldwell. We got close, but as everybody knows, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So, once we got done with the whole Colts and Jim Caldwell experience, the Lions then made the all-out push for the Patriot way when we paired Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn together, and as we all know, that was an absolute unmitigated disaster. And again, that was because the Lions wanted to try and copy the Patriots and cheat the long route to success by using a shortcut. That's why I'm saying I can say all this because I lived it, I experienced it. It didn't work. And now the Bears are guilty of the exact same process, and I believe they're going to have virtually the exact same results. So there's that. Now, let's think about this. How else are the Bears guilty of trying to copy the Lions? How else are they guilty of trying to cheat through a shortcut by copying us? Player acquisition, free agency in the draft. Much like how the Lions, when they were under Quinn Tricia, went about acquiring all these former Patriot players or drafting players that were very similar to a Patriot style, the Bears are going after players that are either meant to be a schematic mirror of what the Lions already have currently, or they're actually going after former players or former coaches. Because think about it, a lot of the moves that the Bears did this offseason, they've been trying to replicate us. I'm just going to run you down a quick list here. The trade for offensive lineman Joe Thuney, known as a top passing guard, same as Kevin Zeitler was last year. Trade for Jonah Jackson. Jonah Jackson is a former offensive lineman of ours, was here when Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator. No surprise there. Signed Drew Dahlman. Dahlman was the best available center in free agency this year. He's a strong run blocker. Definitely supposed to try, heavy emphasis on that word, but it ain't going to happen, try and be the Frank Ragnow for the Bears. Then you take a look at this. They signed Scott Daly, a long snapper that had played with the Lions for quite a bit. Then you take a look at the signing of Grady Jarrett, an undersized interior defensive lineman, a good pass rusher, hasn't been the greatest in a long time, but undersized interior defensive lineman has had good pass rushing success in the past. Gee, why does this sound like Aleem McNeil 2.0? Then you take a look at signing Deo, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but I'll give it my best shot. Odiingbo, a good-sized edge rusher, but he hasn't exactly had a whole lot of success, but he's had some moderate success. Kind of look at him almost like a Davenport without the injury concerns. Because, hey, the Bears already have a Montez Sweat who's supposed to be, in my analogy here, their Hutch. That's what I'm saying here. Then you take a look at some of the guys that they drafted. They drafted Colston Loveland, the tight end. Hey, think about this. What do the Lions love to do with their offense? They love to run a 2 tight end formation quite a bit. That sounds kind of interesting because, wait a minute here. The Lions have Sam Laporta and Brock Wright. The Bears already had Cole Kmet. Now they bring in this guy called Loveland. Sounds pretty interesting. Then they also drafted Luther Burden III, a well-rounded wide receiver, and he's used from any receiver spot. Damn, wait a minute. Doesn't that sound like a wide receiver that we have? Oh, that's right. That sounds like Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then, again, the Bears also signed this offseason Maurice Alexander Jr., who, wait a minute here, when he was here in Detroit, he was known as also being a punt return specialist for us. Man, doesn't that sound like Khalif Raymond? I mean, tell me I'm wrong. They are literally trying to copy us. Like, hey, you know what? We are going to try and find guys that are either carbon copies or pretty damn close, facsimiles, and say, hey, this is what we're going with. And it's like, I don't know how well that's going to work for y'all because the copy's not as good as the original. Not any time. Every time you try and copy something, it's always worse than the original because the original be the original. Freaking cast-offs and, copies and all that other nonsense, it doesn't work because it's not the original. Hence the reason why you can try and say, oh, well, you know what, this cola tastes like Coca-Cola. But it's not Coca-Cola. There's a reason why Coca-Cola has remained the brand that it has for years because ain't nobody going to ever be able to come up with a formula that's better than theirs. Now, I will say this. While all of these moves that I've talked about with the Bears aren't all former Lions players, like when the Lions did with under Quintricia going after almost exclusively Patriots players, the design and the intention schematically for all of these players is virtually indistinguishable from the Lions' current players and roster. And in a lot of ways, too many of which to ignore, they are again trying to do what the Lions did by bringing in these Patriots players and Patriots executives. The Bears are now doing it the exact same way because, oh, that's right, not only did they go after all these players that are schematically supposed to be very similar to what we have, but think about all the coaches they acquired from us this offseason. Ben Johnson, Antoine Randall, JT Barrett. That's interesting. So not only are you bringing in former Lions players, not only have you brought in former coaches that were on the Detroit Lions staff, some of which for years, but you're also going after players that are built similarly to what we already have here in Detroit. So from both a player personnel and from the coaching hires, it's abundantly clear that the Bears under Ben Johnson are desperately trying to replicate or duplicate the Lions. And again, the problem is that Ben Johnson chose to overlook, or is betting that he can somehow buck the trend that he himself witnessed in Detroit with Quintricia, that, hey, I can be the guy that can actually find a way to copy somebody, and I don't have to do all the hard work. Because here's the thing, that culture copy I'm trying to talk about, by bringing in so many people with direct ties to the Lions, either as coaches or players, and again, it's obvious that the Bears are doing this, Ben Johnson is trying to manifest his own version of the grit culture into a version of the Bears. Trying to make a version for themselves. And it's like, the obvious issue with that is that this has never worked. Like, has never worked. Anytime you've had an understudy try and take something from somewhere else and try to, make it their own at that particular place, it's never worked. Because I just want to show you something here. For the longest time, teams tried to copy the Patriots because the Patriots were the most successful team for 2 decades plus. And think about all of the teams that tried to replicate the Patriots, and every single one of them failed. Browns, Jets, Broncos, Raiders, us Lions, the Texans, the Titans. Every single team that I just mentioned all hired a former Patriot understudy, coordinator, whatever the case was, and all of these teams at one point or another trying to transplant the Patriot way all failed. Some might have had some success, like the Titans had a little bit of success, but all of them, they failed miserably because it was not sustainable, because it couldn't work. Now the Bears are wanting to do the exact same thing with the Lions' grit culture. And I can tell you right now, it definitely will not work. And there's a couple reasons why. First and foremost, Ben Johnson is not Dan Campbell. Besides the clear identity differences, there's also the personality and the leadership differences. Let me just put this out there for you. I don't recall Ben Johnson ever doing down-ups in freaking, training camp. I don't remember that at all. In fact, that's the only thing that I can say for 100% certainty is a massive difference between the two gentlemen. Again, Ben Johnson is not the kind of guy that gets in there and is like, hey, we're going to require you to do this. He's kind of more like, I'm going to sit back like this freaking, schematic genius, and I'm going to observe everything, and if necessary, I'll say something. He's more of a bookworm. That's not what Dan Campbell is. Everybody and their brother knows that. And think about this. Campbell, his leadership style is to lead by example. Why? Because the grit culture is the embodiment of him. You can't copy something, first and foremost, that isn't yours, but also, second, that you can never embody or live up to, because Ben Johnson is never going to be able to do what Dan Campbell can do, because they're two entirely different people. It's not going to work. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that Johnson lacks Campbell's connection. I'm going to say this right now. A big part of what makes the grit culture work is the fact that Campbell is a former NFL player. He understands and can connect to the players because, well, he's gone through and done what they are doing. He's done the exact same thing. He did it for over a decade plus in the NFL as a player. There's a massive amount of respect and understanding there. Something that Ben Johnson does not know the slightest thing about. He never played pro ball. In fact, he was in college, but here's the thing. When he was in college, he never played in a game. He never competed in a game. He was always a practice player. So think about it. This guy has virtually no experience from college as a player. He has no professional experience as a player. So to try and think that Ben Johnson is going to have the same type of level of connectivity, try and use the same style of leadership to implement a grit culture that's supposed to work in Chicago, it ain't going to work. I'm going to tell you this right now. If you think that it'll work or you think he's going to have some success with it, you be insane. And then, finally, here's another point that a lot of people ain't thinking about. Johnson has no background to Chicago. Think about the last truly successful coach in Chicago outside of Lovie Smith. That would be Mike Ditka. Now, consider this correlation, would you? Mike Ditka both coached and played for the Bears. He was known as a gritty player and had the ability to play and also coach under two legendary coaches, George Papa Bear Halas and Tom Landry. And as I just mentioned, Johnson never played in the NFL, and while Campbell isn't a legendary coach yet, he is by far one of the best coaches in the NFL. Now, consider Campbell, who played and also coached for some legendary coaches himself, Sean Payton and Bill Parcells. Interesting correlation there. And I find the connection of the fact that Campbell, who, let me just remind y'all, along with Ditka, they share the similar, pattern of the fact that, hey, the coach that they are, They coached for a team that they had originally played for. That's what made them so successful, is because they understood the city that they were coming in to coach for. They understood the team. They understood what that team had gone through. They got the culture because, they were a part of the culture from the very freaking beginning. It's kind of hard for somebody who's never had any sort of connection to the city, never any connection to the team, to try and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to come in here and I'm going to transplant a culture, that's right, from a division rival. Do you really honestly think that's going to work? If you do, you're nuts. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. When you take a look at the success that Mike Ditka had with the Bears when he came back after his playing career was done and after he'd been coaching with the Cowboys for a bit, there was a reason why he was successful. Chicago is a very tough, very gritty, no-nonsense town. They do not play games out there. And they require the same from their players and their coaches. It's the same thing that happened here in Detroit. We were tired of trying to play this game of, let's get cute and futzy with it and try and figure out a way to, make this thing happen as quickly as possible. It's like, no, this is Detroit. We have to do things the hard way. We have to earn them the right way. We have to make sure that it's going to be something that is solid to the foundation. That's why it worked with Campbell, because he understood that. We're a blue-collar town. We're a gritty town. That's what we do. So think about it. When you weigh that evidence against Johnson's weak and mediocre background by comparison, I don't see how Johnson will ever be successful in copying a culture that he himself doesn't fully understand in a town that is known to be brutal to coaches and players who lack success right away. That's my argument. Some people might say I'm putting way too much into this, but it's like, listen, we've seen some coaches that have gone to Chicago that they're not slouches of coaches. John Fox is not a slouch of a coach. The guy took the Panthers to the damn Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, or actually got to another Super Bowl with the Broncos. He's a two-time getting to a Super Bowl head coach. So it's like, okay, he clearly knows what he's doing. The fact that even with the Bears he couldn't make it work, it tells me it's more than just knowledge. It's more than just schematics that you have to have if you're going to work in a place like that. You have to understand the team. You have to understand the culture. You have to understand the city. And if you don't, heaven help you. And the fact that Ben Johnson is trying to take a culture from a division rival and somehow think that's going to work, it's like, buddy. You are setting yourself up for success with every brick and mortar you're laying. It's not happening. I'm already seeing the signs, and it's like, I'll be surprised. I will be surprised. It's like, nothing against Ben Johnson, but it's like, dude, you obviously do not pay attention to history very well, because history has a tendency to repeat itself when you don't learn from it. And right now, I'm seeing all the telltale signs that he didn't study his history, because the evidence is right there, plain as day. But anyway, folks, I'm going to end this conversation. I believe I presented my evidence and my thoughts and logic, so I'm going to say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. The more we do that, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that, I hope I was able to give you guys something new to, think on, something new to, possibly kick around in the cranium. Again, I try to give you guys new and fresh perspectives on things to talk about, because I truly want to give you guys that best experience whenever I podcast. Whether it's the first time you watch me, you guys have been watching me forever and a day. Also, hope everyone has something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.